Yeah. Someone got gun on that dirt. Yeah. Yo, if I were podcasting, it would be insane. Knowledge flowing like the sweetest rain. Professor Bear on the mic, spreading wisdom wide. A bear's thoughts, that's my pride, I can't hide.
With the voices in your ear, changing the game.
If I rule podcasting, every thought we'd ignite. In a world of chatter, we'll just walk in the fight. With Professor Bear, we're climbing to new heights. A Bear's thoughts podcast, shining bright in the night. Topics from the heart, never sounding the same. God laughs at debates, never dull or bland. From culture to tech, take you by the hand. Join the ride with us, feel the vibe expand. With every episode, we shine that
beginnings on the cusp. Not too old to adjust. Old dog, new tricks. Remember, I was just a pup. Something dirty in my cup. Clean soul.
So tune in, don't miss what we got to share. If I rule podcasting, I spread the love everywhere.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me this evening. I am Professor Bear, and this is A Bear's Thoughts. And the thought I have today is, wow, I really need to learn how to manage my time and do things when it's on my mind. Guys, girls, I have been having such a ball doing this Podcasters Appreciation Month. I've got to talk to so many great people. But with getting to talk to some amazing people, family and friends, I've also had some hiccups along the way. And one of my hiccups is I plan to, hey, I got this guest I'm going to bring on and love it. Well, sometimes if you don't write stuff down right away, you kind of forget. I am 52 after all, so hey, cut me some slack.
Yeah, wait till you're 58. I think you're forgetting stuff now. Wait until you're 58.
Hey. And the thing was, I've never been a wrestler, but been hit in the head so many times, I can't even count. But
you don't have to be a wrestler to get smacked in the head a bunch of times.
Right. I missed this date with a good friend of mine. Again, there have been so many great people out there that's helped me in the journey of me becoming a halfway decent podcaster, as I like to say. And this gentleman, I reached out to him and he had no problem bringing me on. I've actually been on the show a few times. I think we connect on our love for a lot of older wrestling, and the knowledge that this gentleman brings is just amazing. And I wouldn't have felt right to have an appreciation show and not get this man on here. So with that being said, I want to introduce you to my friend Russ Jackman. Sir, how are you doing this evening?
Well, hey, you said you get me in for Podcasters Appreciation Month, and we've still got like 4 hours left while it's still January. So you're a man of your word, you know. And as I said to you before the show, the four most magical words in professional wrestling are card, subject to change. So you don't get involved in this industry unless you're able to like react on a moment's notice. And, when stuff changes, you can't stomp your feet in the ground or wring your hands or bite your lip. You just say, you know what, next time you have me on, it's my pleasure. And as I've always said, when you've run out of all possible guests, which you must be at this point in time, I'm ready to do your show. Anyway, no, thank you for having me on, Professor Bear. It's great. We got to have you back on our show, Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast, soon enough. So we'll find a way to fit you on there soon.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
You're going to be super busy in the next month. So we'll catch you in March, maybe.
Yes. When it slows down tremendously. So, as I always love to ask my guests this first question, how did you get into wrestling?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting enough story. I mean, everybody's story is interesting, right? To them, not necessarily to everybody else. But I started watching wrestling with my brother in the early 70s, big time wrestling in San Francisco. I'm based in the Bay Area. I'm in Marin County, but we grew up first in the first 5 years in San Francisco, then moved out to Marin. And people go, where is Marin? Well, believe it or not, we have the other half of the Golden Gate Bridge. Most people just understand that the Golden Gate Bridge goes into San Francisco and they have no idea where the other half goes. It actually goes somewhere. It just doesn't trail off into the sky or whatever. It actually goes to Marin County, and that's where I live, is north of the Golden Gate Bridge. So we used to watch big time wrestling with Pat Patterson, High Chief Peter Maivia, Ivan Putski, and a lot of the other Red Bastien and a lot of Pepper Gomez was a big star here in Marin County. He was actually lived in San Rafael for many years. And so we had, and also Woody Farmer was another big guy from out here. And so we used to watch it, and my brother and I used to beat each other up while we were watching it, and my parents hated it. My father absolutely despised professional wrestling, could not stand it. In fact, he died in 2022, having never seen me or my brother perform. My brother was an announcer for a few years at California Championship Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Iron. And I have had a career over 25 years of managing and doing all that. And he didn't want to have anything to do with it. In fact, I was like, how come I love wrestling so much and my dad hates it so much? And then my uncle finally disclosed to me that my great-great-grandmother, Granny Gelnay, used to go to the matches in the early days of San Francisco. And when she lived in New York, back in New York, and she used to be one of those grannies that used to whack guys with her purse as they went down. And the wrestlers knew her and all that stuff. And she used to watch at home. And, she would say to my uncle, I want a beer while I watch wrestling. And so she would say, but I can't finish a whole beer. So they would split half a beer and watch professional wrestling. And so I never knew that. I never knew that she was a huge fan while she was alive. But I guess wrestling just skips a generation or so and then comes back up. Because I can tell you, my kids don't give a darn about wrestling. They like the fact that I like it. I mean, they understand that I'm passionate about it. They've never watched. The best I could do was get my daughter to watch Rocky III. I said, because if you want to understand the 80s, you can't not watch Rocky III. Rocky III might be one of the most 80s things that in existence. I mean, you've not only got Eye of the Tiger, which is like an anthem for the 80s.
Definitely.
Sylvester Stallone. How can you have an action movie without Sylvester Stallone? You got Mr. T in it. How can you talk about the 80s without talking about Mr. T? And of course, you have the movie debut of the late Hulk Hogan. So you throw all those things into each other, and you have, I think, one of the most 80s movies that ever existed. So So I got her to watch that, at least through the Thunderlip scene. And I said, okay, at least you know what that's all about. Although she didn't stay for the immortal line, which is, what's your prediction for today's fight, Clubber? And he lowers his eyes and says, prediction? Pain. That's still one of the great lines. Still one of the great lines of wrestling. So all of that thrown out there. But for a while, wrestling kind of went into a real sort of just kind of a funk in the early from 75 to 82. It totally went off TV. You couldn't find it anywhere. And but I always tried to find it at some point in time because I just love. One thing I was thinking about today, before the interview, was that I love human combat. I mean, controlled human combat. I don't like, people shooting people in the streets kind of thing. Right. But anything that's controlled combat, like martial arts, MMA, or if you're talking about the Society for Creative Anachronism, SCA, the medieval fighting they do, or I don't know if you've seen armored MMA at all stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I find Kung Fu films fascinating. I found Batman fighting in the 60s, the televised, Western fights and choreographed Batman fights to be fascinating. I love it. I love choreographed violence and violence that is controlled because, hey, Bruce Lee never beat anybody up, right? I mean, not in any of his movies. Chuck Norris has not beaten anybody up in any of his movies. But the fight choreography is fascinating to watch. I love it. And because wrestling is a whole story built around fight choreography, is something that I just find it leads into that area of my life that also loves comic books and loves action in general. I just can't get enough of it. And so I've really been a fan for my entire life. That led me into my professional life, where I started first with All Pro Wrestling, a federation that you can see in the movie Beyond the Mat.
Yes.
And I worked with Roland Alexander as the attorney for APW. And then there was a dramatic split after King of the Indies in 2001. And they all moved, most of the wrestlers I moved to Pro Wrestling Iron. And from Pro Wrestling Iron, I was there for several years. Then it went out of business. I was out of wrestling for a couple of years. But then came California Championship Wrestling, which did its thing down in the middle of kind of north middle California. And then I worked a little bit for SPW, which is in Sacramento. And then now I'm working with Wrestling for Charity, which does stuff in Northern California. So that's a quick summary of how I got to where I am today. And I've managed all sorts of people. I don't know if you want a laundry list of the talent that I worked with.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, one of the things was that, when I was first starting out, the APW rookie class, they had rookies and valets. They had managers and valets working with each other. And I was beaten up regularly, on a regular basis, by Sarah Del Rey.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she used to beat me up every single Saturday. And I called her Sarah the Stiff, because and the boys just laughed their heads off. Because she would just haul off and just clock me right in the face or hit me right in the crotch because she didn't have her accuracy. And I would just be rolling down on the floor, and they're like, "That's a good sell." I'm like, "I'm not selling. I'm really hurt. That really hurt me." And they thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But as far as a purely awesome person, and a person that you looked at and said, "Boy, you're working so hard and you're working so diligently. I am so proud of what she's been able to accomplish, and that she's become a legendary trainer at NXT and at the WWE. Almost every woman that's come out of NXT or the WWE has had some kind of training with Sarah. So it's just amazing. She is one hell of an amazing person. But I also worked with a very early, Dalip Singh, who turns out to be the great Kali. And I managed him for a single match. And I worked with Bison Smith for a long time. And I worked with, I managed the match against Samoa Joe. He took a dive out on me. And
wow.
I worked with Barry Horowitz, and I worked with at California Championship Wrestling. We had Timothy Thatcher was wrestling for us extensively. I mean, I remember him just as kind of a gee whiz, hey, he was just so thin. He was wiry, He has put on like 100 pounds of muscle since I knew him when he started. I've worked with Brian Cage, and I've worked with Nigel McGuinness, and I've worked with let me see, I'm trying to think of some other. Rikishi. I managed to match against Rikishi. So I've done a lot, from like the high levels of working with some, legendary Hall of Fame types to, people that are just wrestle one show and then they never show up again. You never see them again. That's the love and the beauty of working in the indie scene,
Right. So with the history that you have in the business, how did that translate from being in the business that deep to you doing podcasting?
Well, I've always loved. One thing was when I was at California Championship Wrestling, I did what I called the Sotelo Spotlight, where I would, before the match, guys are just hanging around, I would just interview them and put it up on the website. So it was kind of podcasting before podcasting, because we're talking about 2006, so nobody knew what a podcast was. But I did do the Sotelo Spotlight and interviewed a number of guys that, were kind of standouts. And that was really a lot of fun. I really loved interviewing people. I also have been a sports writer in my lifetime. I have a sports podcast that I've done with Vern Glenn, who is one of the legendary sports announcers here in the Bay Area. And I don't know if you were ever a baseball fan. I don't know if you know who FP Santangelo is.
I have heard of him.
I did a show with his son for a number of years. A really nice kid. So I have this love of interviewing people. I really, as much as I'm gabbing over you and not letting you have like a moment to talk, normally I sit there, it's the other way around. I'm listening to everybody else talk. And Evan Ginsberg, who is was the executive producer, creative producer for The Wrestler, Mickey Rourke movie, and also 350 Days. He and I was on his show a number of times, and we, were just on Facebook talking back and forth. And when COVID hit in 2020, and we were both locked down, I was starting to go a little bit insane. I really was. I have twins, and I'm married for the last almost 21 years. And it was like The Shining. I mean, we were just all stuck in the same house every day with each other. And Evan lives in a one-room apartment in New York City. So he was really locked down. And we were both going nuts. We just said, we've talked about doing a show together. So why not use the apocalypse as an excuse to finally do what we've been saying we should do? So we created Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. And now that in May will have been on for 6 continuous years. When I say 6 continuous years, I've missed 2 weeks in 6 years because I was moving. That is the only reason that I haven't done 2 shows, because I literally did not have my internet hooked up to be able to do such a thing. So 304 shows, pretty much all in a row. And I mean, I won't take a week off. It's become such a big part of my life, and so much of a fixture of it, that to not do a show seems really weird to me now. You know, it's become such a habit. And it's opened me up to be able to talk to people that I never ever would talk to, including yourself. You know, you're a perfectly wonderful gentleman, but I would never run into you because you're all the way in the South, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I've driven across the United States twice. I'm not driving back across the United States again anytime soon. So, although now that I've met all these people through wrestling and everything coast to coast, I kind of do want to do like a wrestling and everything coast to coast tour one day where I can go and meet all these people in person I've been talking to for all these years. But that being what it is, it allowed me to get out of the house virtually to places like everywhere from New York City to Toronto, to my friends in Australia that I have, to England, Germany, France. I even did an interview with somebody that lived in not Venezuela, lives down in South America. And of course all across the United States, Florida and Oregon. I've made a lot of good friends in Oregon. For some reason, I'm like a darling of the Portland wrestling scene. So I love it. I mean, they're great people up there. And one of my friends that I wrestled with or worked with in APW moved up there. And so I interview him, and he's gotten me some really good guests like Len Denton, the grappler.
Oh my goodness.
And Princess Victoria. I don't know if, So, I mean, it's been great. So, I mean, I love being able to meet people without having to go anywhere. It's really a lot of fun. And there's stories. There's so many stories. Everybody's got something really interesting that they add. I've only had one bad wrestling interview on the show, and only one bad wrestling interview in my whole life by somebody that was important. And that actually was my first wrestling interview, which was with Lex Luger.
Wow.
I was brought in by a radio station in Sacramento to interview Lex Luger at the end of his Lex Across America tour.
Uh-huh.
Worst interview ever. He was so checked out because it was at the end of the 3,000-mile journey they had done. It was 105 degrees in Sacramento at a water park. He opens the door to the bus, like sees all the screaming kids. I had a press pass, so I'm like, okay, I'm actually scheduled to interview you. He like goes, okay. I come onto the bus. Everything was a yes/no answer. Everything. And it was just so obvious he did not want to talk to me. After 5 minutes, he's like, interview over, get off my damn bus. Kids were all screaming for autographs, closes the door, doesn't sign a single autograph, and books out of there. And it was such a bad interview that when I brought it into the radio station, they're like, this is so awful, we're not going to play it. So it never aired. And I learned something about, understanding, and when somebody's checked out, don't even bother, with the interview. So he was really rough, and I haven't interviewed anyone as difficult ever since.
I've had a few interviews where I felt like I was pulling teeth to get a good response to a lot of questions, but then I always try to think of it like this too. I'm like, if you're nervous, don't think of it as an interview. Think of two old friends carrying a conversation. And it took me a minute to realize, because of course, when you start, you're nervous, and depending on who your guest is, you might be talking to a Hall of Famer and you're just intimidated by them and everything. But I think for me, when it finally hit me, I was just like, have fun. This is what you wanted to do, to have fun, to get stories out and different things, and don't be so stuck in the way you're going to do the interview. Let the interview dictate itself.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the only with wrestling for charity, other than I'm sorry, for wrestling and everything coast to coast, the only bad interviews I've had are ones where the connection didn't work. I mean, that's one thing you can't do anything about. Right. And I guess it might get back to him, but I'll live if it does. The Metal Maniac. The Metal Maniac was a bad interview for the exact opposite of Lex Luger. I could not get him to shut up. He would just go on these tangents that were so wild that I was like, that's great. Can we talk about? And he would just bang, keep hitting me. And like the interview went like 25 minutes over time because I was like trying to like get him to just finish up the interview and wrap it up. And I was like, trying to give him a hint. Okay, it's time to end the show. And he would just like come up with some other angle and start talking about it. I was like, please end the show, please. So he's the guy that I wouldn't have back on. Otherwise, everyone's been so respectful and everybody wants to talk about their story. And the other key thing is that I do try to find people that have something that they're promoting so they can, give a promotion for why they're here and try to get more fans, try to get more eyes on what they're doing. We do a lot of people that have GoFundMes for different reasons. We have sadly, a lot of tribute shows for people that have passed. Right. And we talk about the lives that have passed of indie workers and not just wrestlers, but like people who took tickets and people who set up chairs. Those people die too. And nobody says anything about them. You'll never hear about them, on a standard podcast. It just focuses on what happened at the Royal Rumble. I didn't even see the Royal Rumble today. To me, those events and it's fine to have a show that talks about those things, but I'm not really interested in that. The blow by blow, day to day happenings in wrestling are less interesting to me than the stories of the people that I'd rather talk to somebody that set up chairs at an indie event than somebody that, was just wanted to spout out about, what was the pin, when did the pin count happen, in last week's, Raw or SmackDown or something like that. I don't get into that tribalism that a lot of wrestling fans have today, that you have to love the WWE and everything else is garbage. You have to love AEW. Everything else is garbage. You have to love Indie Fed A because everything else is garbage. I don't think that way. I'm a wrestling omnivore. If you knew all the things that I'd watched in my lifetime, from AAA and lucha stuff to indie shows to, even when I was younger, the backyard stuff, I've seen it all. And so it's not going to be one Fed that gets my loyalty. It's going to be, what are the guys doing in the ring, and how are they telling a story, and is it something that the fans care about? Is it something that they have a good booked show, and are there things going on in the ring that I find intriguing? And it's not just a spot fest. It's something where guys show they can actually wrestle a little bit and carry a crowd. And it's just not a series of finishers all chained together until one guy, and then you don't even have a clean pin. You have 30 guys running in during the show, during the match, and interfering. It's just, that to me isn't great booking, Yeah. To me, go ahead.
What I find, if I have a choice, again, I definitely love talking to Hall of Famers or just older wrestlers, because I love to understand what their thought process is now and how they feel like they left wrestling, and just to fan out because we all are fans. So I definitely would like to pick their brain on different things. But I have just as much fun as indie guys and girls who are just starting out. I love to find out their attitude about things, what they do to train. Do they follow older wrestling to get some inspiration? And because I feel like I'm helping the business by getting you familiarized with the up and comers and giving them a chance to, who knows, maybe a promoter watch my show and like, hey, I like this kid. I'm gonna try to reach out and book them. And I really enjoy that. And then I have the side of me that loves talking older wrestling. Get to talk about uh, AWA and who knows the true history of Hogan and Savage and stuff. That is, as I tell a lot of people, wrestling is not just a one trick pony. There are so many different styles and different appetites. And especially depending on where you are from, it makes a difference in the wrestling style that you grew up on.
Sure.
So,
sure.
And that's why, like me, I will watch any different type of wrestling. And sometimes I find myself looking at something totally different than a normal fan would. They're watching the match. Well, maybe I'm just watching to see if I can see if they're giving each other signals, how long they've been doing it, if they're telling a story. It's just depending on my mood, honestly. Because some wrestling, I'm zoned out. I just want the action. Don't care about the story, nothing. But then it's like, I need the story. I want to see if you're still doing traditional style wrestling and using techniques that a lot of people won't use today.
Well, I love there are two things about wrestling that get me right to the soul of where I am. One is a clash of styles. I love seeing a guy who is, a high flyer against somebody who's a strong style, power move guy. I mean, I love that. I love seeing the big guys against the small guys. I love seeing, someone who's a karate guy go up against the guy who's a brawler puncher. I love seeing this clash of styles. It's less especially as we've moved out of the character phase of wrestling, you don't see that as much. But It's something that when you do see it, I find highly enjoyable. I just do. Like Japanese style guys against lucha, that's fun. To me, that's always fun because you kind of see in your mind who's going to get over. Is it going to be what style is going to get over? And that's fun for me to watch. But the other thing I love, and I really, really love, is mass wrestlers. I love, but not necessarily lucha wrestlers. I am a big fan of the old style mass wrestler. So the big, tough guy that doesn't say anything and has a spindly little manager like myself do all the talking for him, and he does all the enforcing. And you name it. I mean, I follow mass wrestlers like people collect baseball cards, whatever. Whether it's the original Destroyer, or whether it's Mr. X, or whether it's Dr. X, or whether it's the Spoiler is my actual personal favorite all-time wrestler. Mr. Olympia, Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. I love those guys. I just did the Assassins. I love and the Grappler was great to have on my show for just that reason. That's why I've always managed, or usually managed, one big mass wrestler in my entourage. the Sotelo syndicate, so to speak. I usually pick some guy that isn't so great on the mic, but putting the mask on makes them, it really transforms them to being something they're not. I really want to try to enforce into the wrestlers that I manage with the mask that it's about pantomime. It's about physical communication to the fans. It's something that they actually learn once they put on the mask. It's no facial expressions work. So you've got to be more physical in your hand gestures, in your body language, in the way you move in the ring, in the way you communicate with me. You know, just don't stand there and just talk to me, because no one's going to get that. You know, wave your arms around, point at me, you know, grab me by the shoulders, or shake me around, or, I might, slap you, if you're not doing things right, or I'll pat you on the back if you're outside the ring. And being more physical in what you do, it actually allows them to tell a story and to communicate with the audience in nonverbal ways.
Right.
And for gosh sakes, that is what's really missing in so much wrestling today, is that guys are so used to having 20 minutes on the mic before they get in the ring to just chew that microphone up. And you could be telling a story in the ring for that 20 minutes that you're killing that mic. You could have been telling the story for 10, 15 minutes by your actions in the ring.
Yes.
And that is something that's lost. I want to see 5-minute intros and 20-minute matches rather than 20-minute intros and 5-minute matches.
Definitely.
You get that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, I'm proud to work with a lot of these feds, like Wrestling for Charity. The booking there is great. They really get into the idea that, we don't want to have guys just sitting there on the microphone and there's no big sing-alongs or anything like that. It's just, get yourself into the ring. Maybe you have a 30-second intro, if that, and then just get it going and get it working and tell your story in the ring. So that's what people I thought were into wrestling for. Maybe I'm just too old-fashioned, but I'd rather see, and I don't mind if it comes in the form of a headlock. I don't mind if it comes in the form of a leg scissors hold.
Right.
That's okay. You don't have to sit there and just wrap the guy up in a headlock and just sit there on the mat for 5 minutes. That's not what I'm talking about. But you can work that hold. You can, grab the hair. You can, if you're the heel, if you're the good guy, the guy can get out of the headlock and then you find a way to reverse it and get him back into it again. Or the arm drag shtick, where, guys will work their way out of an arm drag to an arm bar. Then they get back up, they bounce the guy into the ropes, and he still grabs him back and puts him back in the arm drag. And then the arm bar. Who does that? Nobody does. Who does the abdominal stretch shtick?
Oh, God.
I love the abdominal stretch. Nobody does. Nobody does that, or working your way out of a Boston Crab, for instance. Being able to push yourself out of a crab and crawl to the ropes with your hands, or to kick out of it with your legs, or something like that. It's just, you don't have that. Nobody has the patience for that. Or I'm not saying nobody does, but in the big feds, you have this order that it's just got to all be continuous finishers, one after another, until eventually you say it's over, And I don't like that. I'd rather see, I really miss the days of a finisher being a finisher.
Yes.
And only one. You only get one. It's an elbow off the top rope. The guy isn't going to kick out because that's your finisher. Figure 4. You put it in, the guy submits. That's just the way it is. If you want a reversal, get out of it. You do it once a year in a huge match to make it look like that's a huge thing to break out of that finisher. You remember how many people couldn't get out of Sergeant Slaughter's Cobra Clutch?
Oh, yeah.
$1 Dream. Now guys do it in the middle of a match, and it has no oomph to it. Or the claw, as an example, as a finisher. I love the claw. I know it doesn't actually work in real life, but I don't care.
Exactly.
I
It's
don't care.
so funny. It's so funny that you're talking about this stuff because while me and some friends were watching the Royal Rumble together, and we got into the discussion of everybody of the hot spots now. It's like, man, you remember when you got DDT? That was it. It wasn't no kicking out. It was,
Well, especially from Jake the Snake Roberts. Okay.
yeah.
That was his move. And when he did it, nobody kicked out.
Arn
Sorry.
Anderson had a great one. And it's like now everything that used to be a finisher now is a kick out, a setup. It's not even, most people don't even go for pins anymore on stuff. It's like if you threw a super kick, you got to throw at least 20 of them before people will start believing it. It's like, really?
Yeah. No, Chris Adams super kick nobody got out of.
Exactly.
Or Shawn Michaels when he would do it. Yeah. No, it's the watering down of these moves. And then it's really forcing guys to like do these moves that are so extreme that I really think that the livelihood of some of these guys is becoming at risk. And I grit my teeth when I see guys landing on their heads, landing on their necks. You had Steve Regal make that statement that, guys shouldn't be breaking their necks in order to get a match over.
Yeah.
And a number of people were furious at Steve Regal for
But
saying,
he's right. That's the thing. He's not telling a lie. There are too many wrestlers that are risking their health for a spot.
oh yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Well, and the ring is a very risky place. What people really don't understand until you get in the ring yourself. And I have, wrestled a match before, and it was scariest thing in my life, honestly, to be, when you know what's coming. I would challenge anybody who hasn't done it before, if you can, to climb up just to the second turnbuckle and just see, would you jump off of that and land on your back? Most people would freak out. And the third turnbuckle is way higher than you think. And then to think you turn around and jump outside, that's just jumping from. I've seen people get hurt on leapfrogs. And here's a little mini story. It was during a valet class and manager class, and we were doing bouncing off the ropes. Okay. And it takes a lot of timing to bounce off the ropes correctly. And people think that the ropes are one giant rubber band. They're not. They're steel cables with rope wrapped around them and then electrical tape or maybe like a garden hose type thing on top.
Right.
Okay. And this one girl, she's about 4'10". She was not even 5 feet. Okay. So she wanted to become a valet. And we were teaching her to bounce off the ropes, but she was so short that, you're supposed to lift your arm up and put it over the rope and then bounce and use that, to kind of catch yourself and then give yourself the rebound. Well, she missed and she hit the back of her head right on the rope, like where you rabbit punch somebody.
Oof.
And she fell right on her face because she was knocked out as fast as the light. She was just, the light went completely off. She completely knocked herself out, just bouncing on the ropes. She busted her nose, bleeding all over the place. And that was the last we ever saw of her. She just quit, because the ropes took her out. So,
right.
There's a lot more danger lurking around. I've seen a guy completely destroy his knee on a leapfrog. Just jumped up, just landed straight down, and he landed wrong on his ankle. His ankle kind of twisted and his knee went, sideways. And boom, we were taking him to the ambulance later that day. Later after the matches, he had to go to the ambulance. and have his knee worked on. So, even simple stuff, like leapfrogs and bouncing off the ropes. I mean, Kevin Nash can tell you walking across the ring can destroy your knee.
Oh yeah.
Although I think that's also due to many years of stuff that you do to yourself. That's another thing too, is that all this stuff builds up over time. And so simple moves are moves that you can normally take when you're younger, with your neck or whatever. By the time, you get to be like where Sabu was, I mean, he took one big spill and he had to have his entire like hip replaced and knees replaced and elbows replaced, his wrist and elbow were all, in terrible shape and all that stuff. So, it's always a big risk when you get in there, and then you compound that over time, you're really asking for trouble. So I'd rather see guys go back to stuff that is more controlled. I was fine with a spinning toe hold. I enjoyed that, even though it's a silly move. I enjoy, short arm scissors.
Yeah.
Nobody does that, but I mean, not since Cesaro. He's the last guy, I think, when he was in the WWE, did the short arm scissors. I mean, there's a lot of great moves that are out there that are fun to watch and involve, skill, but aren't just raw punishment stuff like, seeing guys doing rolling Canadian destroyers left and right. It's too much. You just go ahead and build to it, but then say, this is the finish. We're going to do small moves and little stuff and body slams and backbreakers until you get to the finish. And then that is the thing that we're going to sell. Just the selling thing. I think that's probably one of the bigger issues, is that nobody wants to sell because they think it makes them look weak.
I found that for me, especially, getting to go to a lot of indie shows near me, I love them because it's a throwback to the times that what I grew up on. And I with the indies too, I love it because there are so many different styles of wrestling out there that you can gravitate to the type of wrestling you like. And it's an amazing thing. And like I love to say, I say today the indies are territorial.
Yes.
But
yes, it's
better because you don't have to go to California to see it. You can see it, get it on YouTube or a streaming service or their website. So you have so many chances to see the style of wrestling that you like, and you can keep up with. You like one particular wrestler, he's going from here to here to here. You can follow him without having to go, and you can see where a wrestler has built himself up, where he's definitely learned more since he wrestled here, and you can see the elevation.
That's Timothy Thatcher in a nutshell. That's the life and times of Timothy Thatcher, from where he started to where he is now. I mean, it's truly an evolution of what goes on. And you can go to a show and not need to take a bank loan to go see it. That's the other nice thing. $20 tickets, as opposed to my friend and I were talking the other day. He said he was thinking about going to Vegas for this year's WrestleMania, and now seats in the second row are $23,000.
I've said this over and over again, and I'm not going to stop saying it. TKO has no respect for us, the wrestling fans. They're only out for the money.
They say it, and they're proud of it. That's what's terrible, is that there isn't even like like talking in the back of their hand or something.
No.
They're like, yeah, we want more money out of you, and we're going to tell you right to your face, we want more money out of you.
And we know you're going to give it to us because you're not going to stop coming. That's why we continue raising price. The biggest thing that really turned me off about TKO is when I heard the story of Lana saying that she had to pay for tickets to come to see her husband wrestle. They used to let family come in and not charge them. Now you have, if your family wants in, they have to pay.
Well, it's the idea that they'd rather sell one seat for $10,000 than 100 seats for $100. They or 1,000 seats for $100. They don't mind, you know. And I think that next year, 2027's WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia, we might just see like one sheik sitting in the middle of the row and like, you know, stretched out, you know, and everybody else being just totally blank. You know, and they bought the whole row for themselves because they have that much money. They can spend $1 million on seats and just, you know, seeing one guy sitting in the row, and just, you know, taking a section to themselves. It's just, and that's terrible because wrestling wasn't supposed to be for the elites in this world. It's supposed to be an entertainment for families, for blue collar workers, for people that can't afford, you know, I mean, look. In another week, we have the Super Bowl here in San Francisco. And it's basically, I could be there. I could go to a Super Bowl in a 3-hour drive from my house or 2.5-hour drive from my house. I'm not going because it's the least expensive seat is like $4,000.
Yes, I saw that today. And I was like, I guess I would never be at a Super Bowl because I'm not. Like you said, when you got to take out a home loan for one ticket, it's ridiculous. And I'm very big on telling people to go to indie shows, and I always have this caveat: I'm not saying it's better or worse than WWE or AEW or any of the majors. But what I'm telling you, your experience will be different and it will be better. If you're
not going to sit 800 sections up in front of a friggin' pole. And it's funny because when you do see people at WrestleMania, what are they doing? They're either on their phones watching it, or they're watching the big screen because the wrestlers themselves are like, you can only see like this much of them.
Yeah,
they're so far away, and you know, they're so removed from the action. Whereas in an indie show, you are right there. I mean, even if you're in a quote unquote cheap seat, you can see and feel the impact of the guys in the ring.
You can actually get to meet them after the show, have a conversation with them. I told somebody, I said, you can take him, his wife, and his kids. I said, you can take your family. I promise you, you will have a memory. Your kids will have a memory they will not forget. You could go buy merch, get food, and still leave with money in your pocket.
Yeah, maybe 100. You know, you probably do it for $100.
Yeah.
You know? Instead of like $2,000, even for the AEW is coming to Sacramento, and I think the cheapest seats that we were looking at were $275 for that. And I mean, it's AEW; it's just a regular house show. It's not even like a major event or anything like that. It's just gotten so outrageous. And you know what? But what I like is that indies can react to that and they can fill that void. They're not in that mode of TKO where they say, well, we paid $8 billion for the WWE. We'd like to make it back in 12 minutes, 12 minutes from now. So we're just going to charge these outrageous prices. It's all TKO, saying, yeah, we paid $8 billion and we want all our money back now.
Yes.
We can't wait 20 years to get it. we want it, next Thursday.
Right.
And indies don't operate on that same thing. I mean, they're happy to make money if they can. So a lot of them don't. That is one of the problems, is that sometimes it's a passion project for people, and a way to, what some people say, if you want to make $100,000 into $10,000, start running some indie shows. It can't. But if you do smart booking, you don't have 40 matches on a particular show, or 40 guys on 15 matches in a show. You find a way to, you don't pay fly-in talent. You find local guys to do stuff. Maybe you pay one big name that lives in the area, to come visit, and you don't have to pay for hotel. You don't have to pay for air flight, maybe, or maybe if you do, you pay for like one Southwest flight or something like that. It's
right.
like $200 or something like that. But you don't throw in, because nobody at any indie fed is going to generate $5,000 worth of tickets. I don't care how big you are. That's just not what indie's about. It's all about, unfortunately, truly the $50 payouts for most of these guys. Maybe a good guy gets 100, and maybe your main eventer gets 1,000. And that's just the way it's got to be. To keep all those prices low. But it allows guys to keep coming back. It allows guys to build a fan base. It allows guys to build and gals to build a resume and say they've worked these different feds. And as you pointed out, YouTube, which is something that didn't really exist when, most of these guys, most of my generation was playing, working shows. I mean, YouTube existed, but you could only put up really small matches. They didn't allow you to have basically unlimited time for free that you could upload. Now people have that way to market themselves and building a base and finding people to be fans of you, even if they live all the way, on the other side of the world. They can follow you and be fans. And I do like that. I do think that that's a new type of territory that isn't really a territory. It's not limited by geography. And I think that might save the industry over the long term.
And I try not to be insulting to any wrestler. I've never been in the business. What I am is a podcaster. So I always look at myself as on the outside, but I'm telling them what I see and why I'm giving them this advice. With a lot of younger wrestlers, I always tell them, look, you are the business. If you're not promoting yourself, if you're not getting yourself out there, why do I want to see you? Why would I pay $10, $20 to want to watch you wrestle if you have no personality, if you can't learn how to talk? And here's the key to it too. I miss the art of managers. You got to have, if you're not a good talker, have a manager that can help you, you can learn from. You don't have to be a great talker to have a good segment, but you have to be smart enough to know, okay, I'm not about to try to talk like this guy. That's not my gimmick. Maybe I just need to do this. Again, do your research. I tell people all the time, wrestlers, and again, I'm like, look, I'm no expert. I've just been watching wrestling for all these years. I'm telling you what I see from my point of view. My point of view is go back and watch older wrestlers and learn how to cut a genuine promo. Go back and look at how these two wrestlers only used 5 effing moves and made magic. You do your research. Do not knock. Again, a lot of people have the downside of not wanting to learn from the past. just because maybe, well, they're not high flying. They didn't have to because they did this, this, and this. It's a movement. They told stories with their body. You can tell somebody something with your facial. You don't have to say a word. Your facial expression will tell people.
Indeed, indeed. And also, you know, when you talk about promos and how that all works, it's not about chaining together as many swear words as you can throw. That's not what a promo is. In fact, Buddy Sotelo, my wrestling persona, has never worked blue. Okay. I've never sworn ever in any match ever.
Because you didn't have to.
I've never done anything racially insensitive. Yeah. I've never, you know, called anyone an N-word or anything like that. You know, I've never done anything that you couldn't do at a PG show. Because if you look at like Bobby the Brain Heenan, he was so insulting. But did he ever swear? No, he was never censored. Everything that he did was, and I don't know if you know about what, did you ever hear of the Borscht Belt?
No, I haven't.
Well, back in the 40s and 50s, there were a bunch of vacation resorts in New York City, in Upper New York, the Adirondacks and the Poconos.
Right.
And these family resorts, and these comedians would do the circuit of all these different holiday camps, and it was called the Borscht Belt because it had a lot of like Eastern Europeans there, a lot of like old Jew folks, and that's where guys like Buddy Hackett and guys like some older like Don Rickles,
Right.
perfect example. Don Rickles was so insulting. And he never swore. He never swore. He was like that old like drunken uncle that you had. That
Right.
would get under your skin, but not ever say anything other than old corny like jokes. And that's Bobby Heenan directly picked from that Borscht Belt humor. It's like Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine from the 50s and 60s and early 70s. That was pure Borscht Belt humor. Okay. And I have always drawn from that Mad Magazine sense of humor. I don't know if you remember this guy, Al Jaffe.
Yes, I do.
Who made snappy answers to stupid questions. Did you ever read those?
I never read them, but I know of them.
They're a Bible to me. In fact, when I tell people that they should learn how to do promos, I say, read a copy of Al Jaffe's snappy answers to stupid questions. And you'll see the attitude. If you want to be a heel, you'll see the attitude that you can bring forward and be really insulting to people, yet not do anything that is swear words, anything that you couldn't just say on TV. Because if you get used to that and being able to do something that's PG, you can work anywhere. You can work in churches. You can work for youth groups. You can work for kids. You can work for families. You can work anywhere, even at a edgy like place where they do swear.
Right.
Because when you bring out the Borscht Belt humor, it's new to them. They're so used to guys just saying the F word left and right, and their insults just being, yo mama type stuff. When you bring out something that is wittier, and like say to somebody, I saw you on the internet the other day over at www.imanIdiot.com. that gets them upset without, doing anything that is necessarily, going to get you in trouble with anybody that's, any censorship, or you couldn't play it on TV or something like that. Guys need to understand that, because I think if they thought more about the humor and the witticism behind their insults and behind their promos, Roddy Piper was amazing at that. Buddy Rose was amazing.
Oh God.
Shane Douglas was amazing at that. And the other thing too is you got to give a promo like you mean it.
Yes.
With sincerity and intensity. Go back and look at Piper. Go back and look at Andy Kaufman. Okay, he was my personal favorite manager. And I love Heenan, and he's maybe the best manager of all, or Captain Lou Albano. But for the short time that he managed, Andy Kaufman was one of the most heat-generating people that ever lived. And he so understood audience psychology and studied it like he was a professor of it. You watch I'm From Hollywood and you get yourself a primer on how to do promos and how to generate heat without going overboard. Just lecturing people in the South about how to use soap, okay, and how to use a razor, and how to use a toothbrush was so heat generating. People hated him so much, and yet he wasn't doing anything profound, anything that was obscene or caused anybody, to say he's got to be taken off the air because he's gone too far,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can't believe it. We've already been on this thing for an hour. I hate to chew up the clock on you.
And that's what I tell people this all the time. When I know how good the interviewers went is because I look at the time and I don't realize I've went that long and I can still go. That's one of the things too I love about this Appreciation Month. I love to give people a backstage look at what we do as podcasters. A lot of people think that podcasting is simple. Anyone can do it, but it takes real skills, it takes passion, it takes dedication, and knowing your subject. And I think for me, that is one thing that helps me be very good at what I do, because I can talk today's wrestling. I can talk back in the days. I can talk about being managers. I can talk about refereeing. I look at the business, and I tell people this all the time. I have a different way of looking at the business depending on my moves. Sometimes I tell people, and I truly don't think they believe me when I tell them this. I go to an indie show, and sometimes I close my eyes and just listen. If I can't tell where I am by the crowd noise, if it sounds so loud that I think I'm in a stadium, that lets me know how well the show is going. I went to one indie show, and one of the wrestlers, he was a heel. He happened to come sit beside me, and he just sat there, and he whispered something. I'd never heard what he said, but he whispered something, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I know this is I know what it is, but I really want to punch this guy in the face. Legitimately wanted to punch him. So, like, after the match is over, he came back out. He saw me. He immediately came back over. He's like, "Oh my God, Professor Barrett, I love you. You are such a great podcaster." And he's like, "I was trying to tell you not to leave before the end of the match." He said, "But I didn't want to, I couldn't break kayfabe." So I said, "Oh, so that's what you were trying to tell me." I said, "Look," I said, "I'm gonna be real with you. I think I'm pretty intelligent about the business." I said, "Man, you really made me want to punch you in the damn face." And he's like, "That's the best compliment."
Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Absolutely.
And that's where I know guys work, and stuff, I love that. And like I said, it's just different depending on what my mood is when I go into. Sometimes I'm there to just see certain people, or maybe I'm there to, I like the story, so I'm trying to follow the story. But there's so many different ways and things that I see and get into. It still blows my mind of when people come up to me and, man, we really like you, and man, we listen to your podcast all the time, and I'm still in my head thinking, why?
For me, you could wake me up at 4 a.m. and say, hey, Russ, I want to talk wrestling. And I would just bolt up and start talking. I'm always, the business and everything about it always fascinates me, even when it frustrates me, even when I get mad at it, even when it disappoints me, even when I watch a show and I go, oh, that was just garbage. The next day I'm ready for another show. I'm ready for more action. I'm ready it's constantly unfolding. And the story that continuously, it's like a blanket that continuously like gets sewn more onto it, and I'm never quite done because there's always something more to talk about. Even though we've been going on for more than an hour here, I could talk for another hour because there's like so many things I didn't get to, but that's why hopefully I'll be on the show again sometime soon. And we'll get you on my show again sometime soon, because you are one of the thinkers of wrestling. And that is something to me I really, really value. I could talk about the mechanics of wrestling and what makes wrestling special all day and all night with someone that is a receptive mind. To me, you're like a diamond out there because you've got so much clarity and you understand the business so well that it's an absolute joy to talk with you. I wish I could just sit and watch a show with you from beginning to end and just pick the brain.
We would have to plan that.
You're welcome to come to California anytime, and I would take you to any wrestling show, any indie show that we had out here. And one of these days, I'll make it over to your part. Where in the South are you again?
I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Tennessee. I've been to Tennessee, so I have friends out there. I need to find a way. Jean Bassone from Hollywood lives out in Tennessee, so I owe her a visit. So although her boyfriend might have something to say about that. Oh, I just love Jean so
let me tell you a quick story.
Sure.
I got really ticked off at Vince Russo. And I got mad at him for something he said. And it was derogatory. And I just like, why would you say that in these day and time? Now, I knew why he said it. It's to get people worked up and talk about it. I recognize that. But I went on a rant for a couple of weeks, and it was so bad that some of my viewers like, oh God, do not get him started on Russo. But I was like, he's a jerk. How can he put that in his mouth when wrestling has made him money like it is? And I'm like, I'm not stupid. I know why you're doing it, but that's no excuse. So a friend of mine had him on his show, and that was the first time I really listened to him, not what I think is the gimmick him. I listened to him. I listened to his backstory. I listened to what he grew up on and what he likes to do in wrestling. Afterwards, I thought to myself, you know what? I got him all wrong. What he did was what I said. It was just to draw heat and make people talk about him. I was like, but he's a lot deeper than I thought. I said, I would love to get to have him on the show or me go to his show, so me and him can have a conversation, a debate. And I said that I would not disrespect him as long as he didn't disrespect me. And I know he would try to bait me because that's the type of person he is. He's like sensationalism. He likes that. But knowing what I know now, I wouldn't take the bait. And I would talk to him in a different manner that I think he would respect it and be ticked off because it wouldn't get what he wants out of it.
Well, I admit this. If I ever had Vince Russo on my show, you know what? We wouldn't talk about wrestling at all. I happen to know he's a big San Francisco Giants fan. And I would sit there and probably talk SF Giants the entire time. If there's something I love as much as wrestling, it's my San Francisco teams. It's the 49ers, it's the Warriors, it's the Giants. I can talk that as much as I talk anything else. And I know that he's an old-time San Francisco because he was a fan of the Giants when they were in New York. And I guess he's a fan of them as they are here in San Francisco as well. So I would just shift that over and say, you know what? It's for the first time, Vince, nobody's going to talk wrestling with you. We're going to talk about, the 2012 Giants and why they're the greatest team in the history of baseball and so forth. So, I find the subject that he wants to talk, that's non-wrestling, they can talk about. And sometimes, hey, that's a strategy too. Sometimes there's somebody that you don't have any wrestling common ground with. You find something else that they have that's a big part of their personality, and you focus on that, and that gets them to loosen up a little bit and not be as uptight. But I get what you're saying. Russo is someone that cares a lot about psychology and a lot about, getting inside the fans' heads. And I mean, whether you like it or not like it, I mean, he was successful for a while, in getting WCW to be ahead of the WWF in ratings, the WWE in ratings.
And he's and truthfully enough, he's doing a great job with Juggalo Championship Wrestling. He's bringing in people who were more of the Attitude Era fans. And again, I don't have a problem with that. There's so many different wrestling styles out there. If you don't like one, I'm gonna bet money there's something out there that will tickle your fancy. And for me, if we're just talking wrestling, man, like you, I could go on and on and on. One thing that I still have to this day, because we didn't have internet back in the 80s, I used to buy PWI every month. I have PWI, Inside Wrestling, and The Wrestlers. Those three magazines I bought every month. I started consistently in 88. And I think I went to 2001, maybe 2002 before I stopped buying them. I still have each one of them in my garage. And for me, and this is something else I tell people a lot. When we get into the discussion of when was wrestling the greatest, I tell people this, and I was like, well, what everybody is biased because a lot of us think about what we grew up with, and we feel like that was a magical time, and magical times creates the memory in your head that it had to be the greatest. I said, I'm not saying that the 80s were the greatest. It was what I grew up on, what I enjoyed. So it has a special part of my heart. But I still watch today's wrestling. They have things that they do that is better than back then, but vice versa. So I really never tried to get into the discussion of which is the greatest. I
But
would
let me bring out a point, not to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
to bring out a point, and that is in the 80s, there wasn't as much wrestling as there is now. So you had to really go find it. You had to go hunt it down. And when you found it, it was a special thing. It was something that meant something. And when I could find, and I had this skill of being able to find wrestling whenever it was on. Or like when a wrestler was being interviewed by like Arsenio Hall or something like that, somehow I just knew when that was going on. And my brother had a roommate who hated wrestling, totally hated wrestling. So what I would do is during the weeks when I'd see my brother like once a month, and I would record all this stuff for him to watch. And then he would come and we would just do these wrestle-thons where we would watch like 6 hours straight of all the stuff that I would compile. I would like do all the like best, none of the squash matches, just all the like main events that would be happening for the AWA, for the NWA, for WWF, for Global back in the day, or WCCW, World Class, or you just name it. You know, even AAA and Lucha stuff. If I found it, I would just record it, and we would have these wrestle-thons where he'd come for the weekend, and we would just sit there and just, you know, have a couple beers and just watch all the wrestling that we could. And that was really special. It was a really, and no commercials. I'd make sure that I cut out all the commercials from them. So it was just, you just get this pure, like nothing but all the tapes that I had were like, so this is more action, you know,
Right.
action part 2, action part 3, you know, so much action you can shake a stick at, you know, just every one of my things is titled something with action in it. And those things, you know, it's because wrestling was precious then, you know, and when you had it in your hands, even a squash match felt special to watch because wrestling was an event, you know, like Saturday night's main event. I mean, we used to gather around college, you know, we would all like, you know, gather around and like, you know, 10, 15 of us would sit around and watch Saturday night's main event because none of us had the ability to do pay-per-views. Back then in college, you didn't have, you know, cable boxes in our places. So you just had to get what was on the air, you know? And so when we got Saturday night's main event, we went nuts for it. Because now there's so much wrestling. You really do have it on 7 days a week, usually like 3 or 4 hour shows. When wrestling was on, usually it was just an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and I do wish more wrestling feds would go back to the 1 hour format. Like 1 hour is a perfect amount of time. You know, it meant that you didn't have these long drawn out segments. You couldn't have interviews that went 20 minutes on a 1 hour show. You couldn't just show reruns of what, if you're on SmackDown, what just happened on Raw 3 days ago. You know, you don't just have hypes for the next pay-per-view. You know, it was really just, you only had an hour to push all your storylines. So you got to get them in. And it gave you more of this sense of like, because nothing ever got completed and you know, you were always in anticipation of waiting another week for the next show. It had that serialized drama part of it where now I don't feel that way about watching wrestling. Like if I miss a Raw or a SmackDown, big deal. There's a pay-per-view coming on Sunday anyway. So if I watch the pay-per-view, they'll say everything that happened in Raw and SmackDown. And then meanwhile, if I miss the pay-per-view, there's Raw or SmackDown next week. And they'll just say everything that happened in the previous pay-per-view, or they'll have rematches of what happened in Raw or SmackDown, or some kind of variant of what happened in the pay-per-view on Raw and SmackDown. So I don't feel like if I miss a show, I'm missing anything. I mean, I didn't watch the Royal Rumble today, and I will watch it later tonight, but I didn't have this pit in my stomach like, oh, I got to see the Royal Rumble because can't wait to find out who wins. I'll find out who wins. And if I don't watch the Royal Rumble, I watch it and I hear about the results, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, I got it all spoiled for me. It's like, okay, fine, the Royal Rumble, because we've got WrestleMania coming up anyway. So
Right.
it all, is heading towards that regardless. And even then, like WrestleMania, if you told me to tell you what 5 of the matches were from last year's WrestleMania, I probably couldn't tell you. I can remember them from, like WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 3 and 4. But if you tell me, what WrestleMania 40, the main, the what was on day 2 in the middle of the card, I can't tell you. I don't remember that, and so it's lost its kind of uniqueness because there's so much of it. And I wouldn't, in some ways, I think less might be more.
Yes, I will agree with that. I think though, and here's another thought that I have about it too. You have so much wrestling, like you said, so much of it. You can go through the same thing over and over where it just becomes so monotonous. So you get so shunned by it.
Sure.
Then they hit you with one match and like, oh wow, okay. But then you're like, well, I had to sit through 3 hours of this just to get to that. And
3, like for WrestleMania, it's more like 8.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think, like, going back, like we were talking in the 80s, my brothers and sisters, they lived in Atlanta. I love going to visit because in Atlanta they had a wrestling channel that had 8, I think they went 8 to 9 hours of nothing but wrestling, and it was from all over the world. So I got to see so many different promotions I didn't get to see in Knoxville. So when I was there, they knew where I was going to be. Just so happened, my brother, he worked for a car dealership. He rented to a lot of wrestling, so he knew wrestling. One day, I'm sitting at my brother and sister place. Get a knock on the door. I'm playing my nephew. My nephew couldn't have been 2 months old at that time or whatever. Get a knock on the door. Go to the door, open the door. Who's standing in front of me? The Junkyard Dog. And I'm just like stupefied by it. And he asked for my brother. And I'm like, okay. And I holler upstairs. He said, well, send him up. I'm sitting here thinking, this is the Junkyard Dog. He's in my family's house. He knows my brother. And it's like, wow. And my brother knew how big of a fan I was. So he would tell me different stories. Like he told me a story, he was hanging out with the Samoans. And he's like, yeah, they're real cool people. But man, they got these 2 badass twins. I mean, they're bad. And their little cousin, they all just bad kids. Turns out he was talking about the Usos and Roman. And it just little stuff like that is like, wow, that just goes to bring memories to me and put me in certain mindset. In today's wrestling, they understand, well, you got to catch their attention quick. Because if you don't catch it, it's over with. So they're trying to shop you to stay with the show. Hey, let's go ahead and run you out there and you run a promo and we're going to have you in the main event. Maybe that will keep the casual fan of watching. But they've lost the premise of if you are doing a story, if your story is done well, it doesn't matter what goes in the middle, people are going to stay. And especially if you give them reason to stay, not just for the main event, that that second match, you have to make it worthwhile, because the younger, oh, he didn't do 7 flips. I ain't watching this.
See, Professor, you are such a thinking guy. I mean, I really, really appreciate that so much. That's why I have such a great time when you are on our show, and I love being on this show, because you pull back that curtain and you go inside the mind of what makes wrestling work. See, I love that. I love getting into the human psychology of why wrestling works and how it works and what makes a show good or bad. Because I think that is another thing that's getting lost with how much of it there is out there. It's more like, we'll just, instead of, I don't know, do you fish?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the same thing. Like if you put out 500 poles and put out 500 pieces of bait, and then maybe even throw a grenade into the water, that's not fishing. Okay. That's catching fish, but it's not fishing. Fishing is you with the right bait, with the right lure, finding the right location and putting that bait right out there for the specific targeted fish that lives in that lake. And
the key thing, I learned this from my father, is you have to be patient.
But nobody has that anymore. They just want to throw the hand grenades into the water and just, kill all the fish, and then, say, oh, yeah, look at what I brought home. Bring home one fish, but the rest of the whole pond is dead.
Yeah, and then wonder why the pond is, you go back, nothing's biting. Well, you killed it.
Is that an apt allegory to what's going on in the business right now, too? That this eagerness to just make the home run and to make one event so incredibly huge that we don't have to really deliver in these other events, and we can give people subpar wrestling because everyone will go to our pay-per-view, and that'll be when we make the home run. That doesn't work. Instead,
and on top of that, with the pay-per-view, well, this is not a pay-per-view. This is just our C. Just let anybody. And it's like, no, you again. And this is one of the arguments I always have with WWE, and it's showing itself really badly now. If you do not push your mid-card people to make them feel special and give them chances to rise to the main event, why do I care about your middle guys? If you are not going to make the Intercontinental or the U.S. title mean something, why do I care who has it?
Well, and then we also see this trend too, where they'll put the main event on first.
Yes.
And then dribble out the rest of the card on the way out. And there's no build up to the main event. I hate that. I hate when you have a main event happen first. That's like, what kind of card's supposed to be like a pyramid that leads up to the main event. That's why it's the main event. And I see that happen. The other thing I was going to point out too is that a lot of the problems that we're seeing is because the WWE controls wrestling history. They bought up all the programming of it, and then they've hoarded it, and they don't spend a lot of time ever relishing wrestling history and educating the newer fans about what happened in the past. And you know what? The truth is the NFL is doing the same thing. They're forgetting the great history of what made wrestling what it is. They're kind of embarrassed by it, or it's well, people think it's boring to watch Ivan Putski work a headlock, on Ivan Koloff for 10 minutes or whatever, but instead they should be relishing it, and they should be going back and saying, this is the founding, the building blocks that made wrestling what it is. And if you can appreciate that, then when we show it to you in a modern form that incorporates some of these things,
you'll appreciate
it too.
Right.
Instead, they're like, no, we don't even want people to ever think that this was like wrestling was like this.
Well,
you know,
like everything else, it is going to evolve. And here's something that I love Jim Cornette. I really do. Jim has such insightful insight to things. But here's the thing where I differ from Jim. Jim will talk about, oh, now wrestling is just garbage. These guys are this. You go to these indie shows, they're mud shows. No, Jim, they're not. And here's the kicker to me. Yes, you do have to educate, but you have to understand there's not everyone who wants to be educated on the sport. They want it for whatever reason they want. And that's fine and dandy. Let them have that. You educate the people who want to be educated. You give the people who want to learn. One of the biggest insults last year, and I was so insulted by this. I was like, man, Ivan Koloff is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Ivan Koloff is one of the biggest heels that ever stepped foot in the WWE, and they do not recognize him. Okay, they're going to put him in. They slapped him in. Oh yeah, by the way, we putting Koloff in, and who else? And I'm like, this man beat your greatest champion. You can argue any up and down pick. Bruno Sammartino was one of the greatest champions in your company history.
9 years. 9 years.
Yeah.
And 9 years.
You have a man who beat him cleanly. And this is how you're gonna put him in the Hall of Fame? That is so disrespectful.
And even if you wanted to exclude that for whatever reason, as a tag team partner, and the WCW stuff is now all owned by the WWE, so they have the responsibility to mention that too. With the Russians in the 80s, that was a white hot tag team that had white hot feuds against the Steiners, against the Road Warriors, against the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, you name it. He was not just a factor when he was younger and beat up Bruno Sammartino for the title. He continued to be a contributor. It's, no offense to Stan, but like Stan Stasiak, okay, he was a champion, but like only an intermediate champion. A guy like Ivan Koloff, and it was all a personal thing. It was all, it had more. Same like how you don't have Axe in as the best superstar in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's because it's a personal thing, or he sued them, or what have you. That they can't be bigger than that and just say, you know what? Despite our past differences, this guy made a solid contribution. It's that embarrassment that the WWE hasn't treated guys right. It keeps them from wanting to say, oh, you know what? We'll mention them. The WWE, every program should have some kind of historical throwback and say, on this date in WWE history. That's all they need to do is, instead of having Triple H chew the mic or having, Dominic Mysterio, give another 20-minute promo, cut that into 10 minutes and give 10 minutes to, I'm not saying don't give him a promo, but take a 10-minute, 20-minute promo, make it a 10-minute promo, and do with that other 10 minutes, remind us about the things that made the WWE what it is today.
Or even do this again. People pick and choose what they like and stuff, but imagine they have so many different avenues to do shows. Do an hour show each week to talk about specific wrestling history.
I would watch it. I would totally watch it.
And that's so.
Talk about the life and times of Pedro Morales. I tell you, about 95% of the kids today have no idea who Pedro Morales was. None.
Yes.
None. He's never mentioned. I mean, the guy held the heavyweight championship, intercontinental title, and was the tag team champion.
He was
all within a couple of years of each other.
He was the first to do it.
No mention. No one would know. No one would know. If you were an average kid today watching the WWE, you'd have no idea who he was. Period.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is a crime. That I think is a shame.
And so something that happened for me last year, and I'm super proud of it, even though I had to fight. They had to fight to get me in. I got put into a Hall of Fame.
Wow.
I told them I didn't want to do it because I felt like I was insulting the talent who bust their butt to do it. My friend told me, no, you bust your butt. You help people see this. And I was like, yeah, I do, but I don't have the legacy that a lot of people do. They've earned their stripes. I felt like I hadn't. Well, we went back and forth, and finally he convinced me. That, and he told me once he saw me, he was going to put me in the headlock if I didn't do it. So I was like, okay. So I have that honor, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud because, and someone wrote, and I think I had put it on Facebook about how proud I was, and someone put like, well, Hall of Fame's a dime a dozen. Anybody can get into it. And
I'm not in any Hall of Fame. I died to get into one.
The first thing I asked him,
I have to die to get into one.
And the first thing I asked him, I said, "What Hall of Fame are you in?"
Yeah. No, I'm not in any Hall of Fame. And as I said, I'm dying to get into one, and I might have to die to wind up getting into one. That might be the only time anyone recognizes me. But it's a popularity contest in a lot of ways too.
Yes,
that's okay. It shows that people recognize what you do. I think you're well worthy of a Hall of Fame because you do something that other podcasters don't do, which is go deeper and get to what makes wrestling what it is. And I admire anybody that does that. I think anybody that has that desire in them to push back the curtain and let's actually stop the vehicle while it's in motion and really look at what we've got in front of us is what is the best part of what we're doing as podcasters.
Probably.
And being able to look at the veneer, look beyond just the surface of what we're being given. In other words, we're seeing how the food gets cooked.
Exactly. And
I love cooking.
And we try to keep that recipe alive because if we don't, it's going to disappear.
And, it's just like people who say, hey, McDonald's fries don't taste as good as they did in the 70s, or Big Macs don't taste the same. You want to be able to reach into those things that made it popular in the 60s, made it popular in the 70s, because people still have those feelings. What entertained people in the 70s can entertain people today if you update it in the right way. But what's old can be new because nobody's ever they've forgotten the things that made it great. You can make it great again by bringing those things back, and reminding people. But you can't do it if nobody has any appreciation of history. And if you don't have people understand what made wrestling get to where it is today, you really lose the appreciation of what they're doing right now because it's just being given to you. There's no like, oh wow, well, we really had to have the Road Warriors do what they did to find, how the Usos are able to do what they're doing now.
And be appreciative of it because all the people in front of you didn't have it the way you did. They sacrificed so you can be able to make a real living without having to work other jobs to make money for your family to live well. Be respectful of that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like how superstar Billy Graham laid the foundation for Hulk Hogan.
Exactly.
But most people like just look at Hulk Hogan as just like this isolated phenomenon and don't see that he borrowed so heavily off of, people look at Dusty Rhodes and they don't realize that, a lot of like what Sputnik Monroe was doing.
I got a perfect shirt for that. The man that helped get Dusty the way he is.
Oh yeah, Ernie Ladd.
No, this Thunderbolt.
Oh, Thunderbolt. Sorry,
Thunderbolt Patterson.
Absolutely, yeah, Thunderbolt Patterson.
Like the shirt I wear now. Jim Ross wouldn't be crap without Gordon Solie.
Gordon Solie, yes, absolutely, one of my idols too. With the souffle, my brother, he always loved that. He always loved that.
I always thought the $1 Million Knee was the end all be all.
Yeah, and it just brought so much joy. I can see still within you that joy when you bring up that memory and you're able to connect that with it. And it would be so wonderful to connect the modern generation with what was going on in the past and be able to have them appreciate it, even if they don't say to themselves, okay, I don't want to watch necessarily, a Bobby Eaton versus Ric Flair match, although I don't know why you wouldn't. But if they just know that like Bobby Eaton was an amazing worker and that he was able to fight Ric Flair to a 1 hour draw, for example, or Ricky Morton, as a singles wrestler was able to have an amazing match against like Rick Martel or something like that. These guys had things that they were doing that led to where you're at today. That to me is what's missing. And the WWE has control over all that stuff. And instead of relishing it and saying, we have an obligation since we own all this footage to get people to understand and make it a regular feature of understanding the history, for them to just like go, oh no, we're just going to shove it. We're going to make it as hard to find as we possibly can. And if it wasn't for YouTube and people uploading their own broadcasts, which by the way, I love, I've spent a lot of time watching old NWA footage, watching old WWF footage, some stuff from the Continental Wrestling Federation.
It is so funny. You can't see it, but I have VCR tapes of NWA stuff I recorded, of World Class, of AWA, Continental. I have and I feel I had tapes of Continental that I didn't appreciate, that I recorded over. I could punch myself in the face for it. But again, I go out and look for stuff. By far, one of the best compliments I ever got. I had Ron Fuller on my show. We were only supposed to do like max 30 minutes. And I knew, and we were talking about different things. And it came, I think it was like,
he was the Tennessee Stud, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it was 25 minutes, and I was going to go ahead and cut early for him. It's like, no, we can talk a little longer. We kept talking so much that when we got done, he just cut I just ended the feed. He called me up. He said, you are not going to believe this. My computer just died when you cut the feed.
You went on so much, you overflowed the data.
He was like, he said, I want to tell you that I can see how much you love the business. I hear how much you're respectable for the business. He said, I usually don't do these. He said, but you've made me really happy. and proud that I was on your show. When I hear a veteran tell me stuff like that, Ricky Morton, who doesn't do a lot of podcasts, he told a friend of ours, a mutual friend, that he wanted to do my podcast.
Wow.
And so when I hear stuff like that, when I'm out at wrestling shows and people come up, Professor Bear, how are you? Man, I love your stuff. I know I'm accomplishing something. Even with this long month I've had in January, what I'm about to have in February.
Right.
When I get tired, it's been times I did not want to.
We talk a few more minutes, and you will be into February.
And I know. And I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Then it's like, no, you have an obligation. People are loving you, and you get to educate, and you get to learn. Pick yourself up, put that smile, and go. And I can truly say every interview I did this month, I've had such an amazing time.
I have to go back and watch them. I have to go back and spend some time watching them.
I believe that people can tell the truth about me. That's why I tell a lot of people I don't do a lot of research on them. I say I want to learn when my fans learn.
I was going to point out to the fans that none of this stuff is scripted between me and Professor Bear. We didn't go over any of this stuff ahead of time. There's no pre-made lists of questions that you sent me or say, hey, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about that. This is all stream of consciousness right off the top of our heads. And I couldn't have had a better time like doing it. That's how I love doing it. And I love doing my interviews because Leno sometimes says, oh, you should make this list and say this question and that question. I'm like, no, I want it to be during the flow of conversation and be like I was talking to a friend of mine about the business, not that this is, question A, question B, question C, question D, agenda. And that's it.
I let the conversation dictate itself. We make one thing, like we've talked about just wrestling. I've talked to a couple other podcasters where I was trying to bring them on to learn about them. We went totally left talking about wrestling and stuff. And I enjoy that because you have a better conversation that way. People who are watching can wow, this is good. You can tell both people are enjoying it. Maybe I need to check them out more often. So
I appreciate that. No, I need to talk about comics, man. I see you have the Black Panther comic behind you.
Yeah.
I could have talked about comics for just as long.
I'm a big DC junkie.
Oh, okay. No. Now we finally found something we don't have in common.
Babe,
I'm a super Marvel guy. I'm a big Marvel guy.
Yeah. Well, I'll do both, but I'm more DC. I lean towards DC. But
I'm a super Marvel guy. I actually was a administrator for Marvel Comics 1961 to 1989, and they have 150,000 members. And I was administrator until Facebook destroyed my ID. But I mean, I've met a bunch of Marvel artists and
wow.
and so forth. And I have a collection of about 2,000 comics, including like an original Thor 337 with Beta Ray Bill, signed by Walt Simonson when I sat next to him in at a comic book convention for a weekend.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I have a lot of comic stuff I can talk to. That's for another show.
Yes.
Podcast.
What I wanted to tell you is I want to thank you, not for just doing my show, but for you continuously making the business better. You are doing what traditional wrestlers have always say: leave the business better than you found it. And I truly wanted to thank you for that. I believe you said something earlier about not getting your flowers. I believe in giving people their flowers when they can enjoy them, smell them, and be proud of them, not after
Thank
you're
you.
gone.
Thank you. I
So,
take that as a very genuine compliment. I mean, that's really in a month. It's been very difficult for me. This has been something that has really uplifted me a lot to have the last couple of hours to talk to you about all this.
again, I thank you because you have you're one of my idols that when I know I want to have a good, great conversation to go back, I don't have to worry about trying to explain, no, this guy, no, no, you're thinking wrong. You have to go here, 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 then go here. It's so much, it's refreshing when I can say, oh, Hogan name was Terry the Boulder Golden Sterling. Like, yeah,
Sterling Golden. Yeah.
like what? You actually know? Oh man, it's so much. It's refreshing to have that.
Well,
And
I can tell we've been talking for 2 hours and you haven't yawned once. So I
oh,
know that in itself, I haven't bored you. You've always got so much energy. I mean, it's late over there, and you've got as much energy now as when we first started this conversation.
because I enjoy these conversations, but I know now that it's getting close to ending because my wife just called for me. So
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand that full well. When the wife says the interview is over, the interview
over.
is over. I totally respect that. And I couldn't have had a better time, even if you were paying me money for this. No, I'm just kidding. You're a fun dude. You're a fun guy. I hope I have one chance in the future to hang out with you in person. That's the only thing that I would ask, is that one of these days we find a way to watch or if you ever want me to do a watch along with you,
yeah,
I would love to
definitely.
do that. I would love to do that.
We would definitely have to do some. I truly believe this in my heart. 2026 is going to be an amazing time for my company and me, and we're going to do a lot of different stuff that is just going to amaze the business and fans. And I'm looking so forward to it. And like I said, I could if I had the time, I could go another 2-3 hours easily.
I would too, but we'd probably be getting the divorce papers in the morning for both of us. So yeah, I appreciate it more than you know. This has been wonderful. You're great. You are a Hall of Famer. As far in my, you don't have to get an award to be in my personal Hall of Fame. How do you like that?
I appreciate that. I really do.
Well, that's great. Let me plug my podcast.
Of course, of course.
Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. You can find it on Facebook at facebook.com/wrestling and everything coast to coast, all one word. You can also find it on YouTube. And, you can find me wherever a podcast is desperate enough to bring me in as a guest. I never shut up, and I'm trying to be as prolific as I can. But I love opportunities like this. This is so much fun. I would love to do it again when you again run out of guests. And you're just a great guy, Professor Bear. You're one of the great guys in the business, and it's been my pleasure to make your association through both Facebook and on my podcast, and now on your podcast.
I appreciate that so much. We definitely will talk here in the future about doing some stuff.
Wonderful deal. All right, you have a great evening, great weekend, and looking forward to getting the link so I can put it on my page and
yes. As soon as I end this, it will be coming your way.
Wonderful.
Guys,
everybody out there in podcast land, adios, and we'll see each other. Hey, check me out on Sundays. That's when I upload my podcast too.
Cool. Guys, girls, thank you so much for joining me around the campfire for another amazing, great conversation with people that have that major love for wrestling. I tell y'all that it is something amazing to be a wrestling fan and getting to talk and see behind the curtains of why we do what we do. So, with that being said, as I always love to leave off with, is go support your local indie promotion. You never know who you will see going up on their journey to wherever they're getting to in wrestling. And you can go take your family, get to meet people, get merchandise, get food, and still leave out with money in your pocket.
And guess what? You'll have a good time.
You will have memories that your kids will remember for a lifetime. So definitely do it.
Very good.
With that being said, I am Professor Bear. This has been a Bear's Thought, and we'll catch you around the campfire very, very soon. Y'all take care.
Good night, everyone.